So I'm getting a lot of people asking questions about intermediate developers and what you can do if you are an intermediate developer and you're seeing the market as it is now, but you're not a junior developer and you have experience and some skills, but you're not a senior level. If I'd been thinking straight when I made that other video, I would have added this information, but it's going to have to be a second video. So here we are. If you are a intermediate level development engineer, an SDE2 basically, you are in a weird position because your cohort, the number of people that you are actually dealing with, is about twice as big as the number of engineers that are junior. And so you've got your cohort as an SDE2, and then you've got, the your cohort as a junior engineer, and then you've got, well, let's just say about your cohort as an unskilled engineer, right? So you've got SDE, no experience, SDE, some experience, and then you've got these people, some experience, not senior. And so the biggest problem with that right now is that the actual amount of people that are senior is actually like this right now. So if you are a SDE2, SDE3, a senior of some kind, you have a lot of opportunities to pick intermediate developers and bring them up into the senior dev level. The problem with that is that this means that there's also a lot of people who are SDE3 who want the same jobs as SDE3. So if you're an SDE2 and you want a promotion because you don't want to be considered an intermediate developer anymore, you are actively forced to then compete with this group of people who knows what they're doing, and you are going to be looking for the same opportunities. Meanwhile, you've got people who are, you know, SDE. Let's see here. Let's see, SDE3, 4, and then, P. And so you've got, these are the boxes. I'm not going to deal with the math because this is all from memory and I don't have my notes in front of me because that's on the laptop upstairs. You just have to go with me on this. The This is my honest to God current impression of the market right now. And as I get more data, I'll update it. Obviously, I always do. But my experience right now is that there's a lot of people with no experience that are trying to get into the SDE1 roles. And they're competing with the SDE1 people who both want to stay in the industry and also become an SDE2. The problem is the SDE2 roles, there's just not enough of them for everybody who wants to be an SDE2. And so the issue here is that there's not enough roles for principals. There's not enough roles for staff, which is this one right here. And there's not enough roles for the senior people, whether you're a lead or not. And so the crunch really, really happens because of the SDE2s. And so the problem with this is that these people are going to either increase their knowledge and become more senior and become more worthy of higher pay, better titles, etc., or they're not. Either they're going to wash out of the industry and just stop, and years from now, they'll remember when they were an intermediate level developer fondly as they work in management or some other thing. And at that point, they will not have progressed to SDE3, 4, or 5 in this case. Okay? The people with no experience are currently dealing with the fact that if you actively want to go into the go and actually go up and go up a level, you're going to have to compete with those people. Okay. Now, as part of that, I myself cannot be considered somebody who can compete with an SDE1. If I apply to that job, they laugh it off. I can be a senior again at the lowest. Okay. And so my ability to actively be considered a developer is stuck up here because nobody will hire me as a principal. Okay. If I was a staff, I would still be in that situation. I could either be, if I could either go up or I could go down. And so the thing that you have to understand is that I can go down, but I can't like at this some point like there's a line here. I cannot be that person without experience anymore. Okay? And so what's happening is if I was an engineer with no experience, once you've attained this level of SDE1, you're there forever. Unless you like step away from the industry for like 5, 10 years, whatever, you're done. You're no longer no experience. You never have to deal with that stigma again. But now you're in the Colosseum battling the dragon because at this point, your only option really is to go up, which means you're now fighting this entire group of people who, quite frankly, don't like you and don't want you to be there. And so the end result is that if you are an SD1, you're going to have a really hard time trying to battle it out and become an SDE2 because the competition is going to be fierce and there are people that will knife you in the back because they want to keep their career. And I have been way too kind about this myself. I have actually been way too kind. I'm too empathetic. I'm too kind. I have too much integrity, and because of that, I'm currently suffering. Um, my advice is to not put yourself into a position where you have to be the jerk or the guy that will knife another person in the back because that does not work out long term, and that's why I don't do it myself. But there are going to be people who are going to do short term things, and they're going to think the ends justify the means, and this is going to be a war zone right here. And so the ability to say, "Hey, uh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the guy that comes in and becomes an SDE2 who is a junior." Those people will make it up there. The problem is there's not a lot of room here. And so when you think about the end result of the the battle here, that's why juniors are having so hard of a time because they are hitting their heads against this wall. They can't get up and around the cliff. They just can't. They just can't. And so you are there trying to do everything in your power to climb this wall, and then you're hitting your head on that, and you're having to scale this to go around and finally be able to stand here and go, wow, I'm at a solid SDE2. Maybe I've got the possibility of climbing up and being a senior someday. But that's a lot of people. And so you have to get past all of them. And that's what so many juniors are hitting their head for. The problem is that as time goes on, this is actually going to be kind of a problem because if I were to go in and I were to say, okay, fine, what happens if all those other people are, like, if, like, fine, we add these people to this, right? So at that point, SD2, so let's just say SD1 people will go down, and this is gonna go be smaller. It's gonna be much smaller, and so the bigger thing here is that as these SDE2s end up growing in their careers, learning more things, forcing the company they work at to consider them for future opportunities by asking for it, they're going to it's going to around the next 5 years become more of a war zone for the senior devs. Okay? And then eventually after that, same is going to happen with the staff engineers. And if you all stay in the thing and we're all principals, that's what it's going to look like. And so that's not sustainable. These people will be removed from the industry. And then what's going to happen is some of the lucky people that were SD1s who stuck it out, who managed to find work and have a good work history with no gaps, will someday, 20 years from now, be considered staff or, maybe even principal level, although I doubt that, to be honest. I think what's going to happen is this is the last big wave of developers. I believe this is the last big wave because when you really get down to it, people who are, in technology are in it because they love it. But there's a lot of people that want to do it because they want the money. And those people should be the first to leave the industry, in my opinion, because I'm one of those people who slaved late at night over burning cores and burning Pentiums to learn, GCC and the right code and C++ and C and all those fun things. And these days I'm writing Rust code because, that's how it is. But it's just to as languages advance, as technology advances, this wave will crash. Okay? And so as a principal, I'm stuck here and I'm watching this wave come to me. And I'm realizing that all these SDE2s, if they stay in the industry, will then be SDE3s. And at that point, I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to have to consider them to be part of the SDE3 wave as well, if they get good enough. Okay. And yeah, the problem is that's an aggregate. Okay, it's a sum. And not everybody's that's good. That's good. And honestly, SDE4 and above are purely optional. I've said that in other videos. A lot of people just don't want to be anything except a senior lead or maybe even just a senior that is not leading teams because they don't want the management responsibility. That alone will keep a lot of people out of the staff and principal roles because they are hybrid roles. They are leadership roles. You do have to have a certain measure of emotional intelligence and understanding of people to be able to be effective in them because you're helping to delegate tasks and you're working with program managers to make sure the work is done on the ground. But what it really comes down to is as a software development engineer, as somebody who wants to get the work done and write the code, the better you get, the more people you're going to have to compete with in this current market. And what's going to happen is this particular situation is going to make a lot of people get out of the industry. Okay? That box that I just deleted is not going to be as big as it is because 80% of you are not going to stay in the industry that long. And so you're going to get, you might, I'm just, yeah. I mean, I don't, I'm just not sure that, I think that a lot of the intermediate developers are leave the industry or they're going to be forced out. And then you've got the SDEs that have actively got some experience but are still junior that will also end up being kicked out of the industry by the current market consideration. And then you've got the people who went to school, got a degree, have no job experience at all, but will not get that first job ever. And so they're not going to be a part of any future waves. And that's what the numbers say. Like, this is what the math says. If you've got two cohorts roughly the same size, and you've got a cohort above them, which is twice the size, and is still bigger than both those two cohorts combined, then yes, there's going to be some problems because this is not a static data set. This number gets bigger with age, it changes with age. Okay. And so if you are a senior level developer, you are looking below you on this graph and you're looking at all the devs that you could hire for future senior roles or promote onto your team and give them the senior title. But you're also looking below them and trying to figure out what the pipeline looks like in 5 years, 10 years. Because if you're part of leadership in engineering, you're doing continuity studies. You're being asked by the business, hey, who are some people that we can think about long term? And that's kind of laughable because in technology, long term is like 2 years. They literally will, say, hey, you've got a 4-year vesting period, but then they'll give you a 3-year project that gets canceled after 3 years, like Google does all the time. And so the end result is that long term continuity of the business is always at risk if you're a tech company. But as part of this, they've got a lot of ignorant, unskilled people that only know half of what they're doing that are happy to take a job title that it's bigger than they really have and are happy to work at a lower rate than somebody up here in the red box. And so the SDE3s are looking at that and going, what about my job in the future? And so if I had been smart as a principal, the guy up here, I would have cared more about the senior level stuff and making sure that I was not perceived as too senior to take that. Right now, if I look at a senior role, it's kind of laughable how I get the response of you're overqualified. I don't even get the interview because they know I can do the job, but they don't feel like they can get 2 to 3 years out of me before I move on to greener pastures because I have the skills to go somewhere else, which is ironic because right now what I really want to do is get back to work. And so from my perspective, if I had the opportunity to be with a company for the next 3 years, I would be ecstatic because from my perspective, that would be an opportunity for me that I could stick around for. Because I don't think that I'm going to survive the next few years based on this number. As a principal, as a staff, even as a senior, you've got maybe 5 years before the wave hits, it crashes, and it's going to hit with the force of a tsunami. And that is going to make the job market so much worse than it is right now. Okay. The reason the market is so bad isn't just the fact that Section 174, as I've talked about in my other videos, is making it more expensive to hire. It's not just the fact that tech companies have to cannibalize themselves by laying off people in this red box to be able to afford to keep the people above this line. It's also the sheer amount of incompetent, unskilled, intermediate developers that are happy to promote themselves as better than they really are. And so, because they want an upgrade, right? They want a promotion. For them, it's just marketing themselves. But because they're ignorant, because they don't know what they're doing, they're making claims that are untrue and they may not even know it. But the business, most business people don't know technology, and they're just skilled enough to be able to talk the talk a little bit. Unless somebody more senior, which is a much smaller box, as you can see here, is able to go, hey, actually. And so the end result is that this wave is destroying the tech industry when you combine it with high interest rates that make the new taxes more expensive for companies, the new taxes themselves, which create the costs. And then you also have the promise of, the ability to say, what about AI? And so that's the fun thing because AI will never replace a software development engineer, but it will augment them. And that means that if you are a active if you are actually the sort of person that can be replaced by AI, you're probably on the SDE1 level because I have personally seen AI tools be more productive than an SDE1. They're not always more productive than an SDE2, but here's the fun thing. They are in some cases. And so the big issue here is that really stupid AI used by an SDE3 is still more productive than a SDE1. I get more work done with the tools than I would just assigning the work to another dev that was SDE1 and at the same time doing my own work. And so the same goes with this. As an SDE2, they're going to want to use those tools as well, and they're going to want to be perceived as a more senior developer than they really are. This is going to create a halo effect around developers and make them look better than they really are once they learn how to use the tools effectively. However, without it, they're going to suck. And if you take a developer who has been using these tools every day and depending on them every day, and you turn off their access and you say, look, just open up your IDE and write code. No Copilot, no AI, no nothing. They will not know what to do. And that is the advantage of people like me who are working who are in this red box here. We have the knowledge because we've been iterating through so many years before AI that we're going to have an advantage. But it's still going to be a battle of attrition. And it's still going to be a situation where, unless you give up AI and you keep your skills sharp without it, you're going to fall to it. And so, part of the problem with this is expertise. If you're not familiar with expertise, there's a lot of people will make the claim that 10,000 hours is what you need. That is not what you need. What you need is iteration with good, valuable, up to date feedback in a safe and valid training environment that allows you to make mistakes and learn from them quickly. That is all you need for expertise. That is actually what AI uses for training, by the way. But in this particular case, if you're a human and you're not getting that, you are not going to maintain your expertise because you're giving the back and forth to the AI to do. And yeah, you can learn some by correcting the AI, but that is a separate issue. And so the end result is that this wave here, the SD2 wave, if you're part of that, look to your left, look to your right, recognize that at least one of those people are not going to be there in a few years. Because unless the market gets bigger, and it hasn't and it won't because of the costs involved in doing so, the fact is that anybody saying that there's like a 20 21, 25, something percent increase year over year is lying. And if you're an H1B and you won the lotto, and I mean the lotto because H1B is literally a lotto system, you're in a weird position because we don't really need you anymore. It used to be that, you know, there just wasn't enough engineers to go around. But now with the current market, we have too many people. And so my recommendation is to try to build a life in your home country and don't focus on going to America if that's the case. Because, and I'm going to say this bluntly, America cannot be the host that you deserve. There is no way that we as an American economy in the tech field right now can actually be the kind of host to an H1B guest that an H1B guest deserves, because we would be bringing them over here on false pretenses. The false pretense that their work is valuable or useful or needed. Because right now, the only value that an H1B has over hiring an American with the same exact skills is possibly a wage issue. Basically, the companies want to have somebody who they feel is locked into a lower wage and is locked into being more submissive to the company. And that's it. Somebody with less opportunity that they can exploit. And that's it. And so I'm fully aware that H1Bs get abused. And my recommendation is that you understand, if you're an H1B, that it will get worse, not better. And that you should be making opportunities for yourself without being dependent on the American system. Because this giant wave here is going to crash. And some of that will splash up to the SDE3, but not all of it. And if it does, and if a lot of that does splash in SDE3, then it's going to get even worse for everybody above them. Because the market isn't big enough to hold all of us. And that's what I'm learning by the fake job that I was given, that I literally got an offer letter for. And so if you are the sort of person who believes that AI will replace people, you're partially correct. It won't replace experienced people. It will be used as a tool for experienced people, but it will replace the SDE1s. And unfortunately, what's happening there is if there's no SDE1s, eventually, after 20 years or whatever, there won't be any SDE2s. And then, given more time, there won't be any SDE3s or 4s. Everybody will be a principal, or it won't happen at all. And AI will have taken over the job at that point. Because, as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. Unfortunately, this rising tide is, it's raising. And right now, it's above people with no experience. Over time, it's going to be above people. I actually believe it's already at the SDE1 level. It just feels like it based on my experience with the tool set right now. Within the last couple of months is when it feels like that changed. And we're about here right now, I think. Maybe up to there at the most. But from my perspective, you're still going to need somebody at this level to be able to, a senior person with enough context to be able to do the prompt engineering and understand how to use the AI effectively as a tool to be able to do the work. Because let's face it, you're not going to be able to do every line of code with an LLM. That's just not going to work. If you break it down into smaller functions and divide and conquer, keep things solid, keep things dry, and use all the good engineering practices, it'll be easier, but it won't do all the work for you. And so the people who are pimping out this idea of doing a full app on a prompt are ludicrous, insane, and actively misrepresenting the issue. And what they're doing is they're showing very curated prompts for very specific problems. And yeah, you might get a solved to do app problem there, but how many to do apps do you really need? And what is the value of that to do lip over app over the other one with the same prompt? Like that's the big issue is that at some point you're going to have to modify and customize things to have market differentiation. And that's where real developers happen. And so someone like me is waiting for those opportunities. But right now we're dealing with the wave. And so I said in my prior video, the SD1s and SDEs with no experience, they're having problems not just because there are no jobs for them because of AI and everything else, but also because they can't scale this wave wall right here, this water wall, whatever you want to call it. But also, let's face it, if you're an SDE3, you want to keep your job. If you're a principal or a staff, you want to keep your job. And so an SDE1 might be useful, but they're also not going to be as effective as an SDE2 with access to the right LLM. And so once you understand prompt engineering and you understand prompt injection and you understand all those things, because let's face it, context is king, the bar is getting higher and higher. And so to answer your question, if you're an intermediate developer, what I believe you should do is get out of the industry before you're forced out of the industry, like so many of the people above here, because it's happening. The industry is dying. And I have yet to see any data that says otherwise. I firmly believe that because of Section 174, it is now too economically difficult for startups to exist. They used to work, as I said in the other videos, under the principle of rapid iteration, trying to find product market fit every year, pivoting as needed, doing the things that they allowed them to do because they had the tax advantage status of doing that. They no longer have that. And offshoring is killed by it as well, which I went into in the other video. So technology is going to get more expensive, but it's actually going to be harder to find people, and wages are going to go down. They've already gone down. Too many people wanted to get into tech because of the money and not because they loved it, and they absolutely destroyed the industry that way. Because a big chunk of this blue wall here is people that actively don't love technology. They love the paycheck. And so the reason they are going to not be a part of this is because what's going to happen is they're going to realize that the wages are going down and they're going to go off and find something else to do because they didn't love it anyway. So they're going to be the first to go. They're going to chase the dollar over everything else. And who knows? Maybe that in itself might correct some of the market and make it easier for these SDEs down here with no experience who actually do love it to get the opportunity. But I feel sorry for anybody in tech right now because either you had a job, you're working overtime, you're working high. I got a friend who was just promoted to director and he's working insane hours. He wants to hire and he's not allowed to. He's literally pointing at roles and saying, we need somebody for this, this, this. Here's the business case. Here's how much money we would make. And one of the fun things about this is even though he's proven mathematically, based on the numbers he's presented, that the company make more money, they're refusing to hire. Why? Because they perceive the short-term benefit of hiring to be less than the long-term benefit of letting the market crash. We've gotten past the point where companies want to keep things healthy and they realize that it's in their best interest to harm the labor pool as much as possible because it keeps their competition from having these really senior people. And so what's happening here is you've got the people up here who know what they're doing and they are not going to be the sort of people like these are the gold star people, senior and above, right? But what they're wanting to do is they're getting rid of them. They're firing them so they can save the budget and keep their company alive because of new taxes and everything. But they're also trying their best to make sure that these people don't end up at their competition because that's a competitive threat. So that's what's happening here. That is why the SE2s have such big have a big area right now, because the companies are investing in SE2 roles. They're not investing in senior roles. They're not investing in principal staff, whatever. And they're not definitely not investing in junior roles. What they're doing is they're saying they've got a senior role. They're giving it the effort and requirements of a senior, but paying it like an SD2. And that's what's going on, because they know that these gold star people, if they worked for their competition, could completely blast past them. And they don't want that. So they're trying to keep these other people out of the industry. One of the things that I have told myself is that even if I lose everything I own, even if I lose everything and, whatever, I will still do software of some kind. And so if you're one of the 6 people who unsubscribed from my channel today, fuck you. I don't need you anyway. You're just not going to learn like everyone else. Oh well, it's on you. Because I want to do more videos like this, and I don't think this situation is going to stop me. It's going to slow me down a bit, but if I have to be homeless and charge my phone through a solar panel, I will.